concept to the senior leadership in the company. And I think many of them thought I had lost my mind. You can't imagine what a novel approach it was to the marketplace at that time. And looking back, it was the right thing to do. We've grown in all these other markets because of the resources we dedicated to those markets. It's not about providing a product to a customer, it's providing a solution to their problem. And so at the engineering level, you get involved with customers and they call you, I have a problem, can you help me come up with a solution? And that's where business is today, which is a good thing because the incredible people at YKK excel at that.
Hey Geniuses, we're so glad you're here. And today's episode of Hey Genius is going to really inspire you. I am Dr. Genie Snyder, your host of Hey Genius, Make the Connection. And our genius guest today is Alex Gregory. Alex is a global leader. He is the retired chairman of the board, former CEO, and former president of YKK Corporation of America. That's right, folks, the Zipper people. But if you haven't studied them, you will find out how many more products and more services they provide. You are probably not only wearing one of their products, you might be sitting in your car on one of their products. So listen to Alex Gregory today. Don't miss a minute because he's going to give you some real insider tips on how to build culture, how to bring the genius out of people, and how to really deal with crisis in a business as well as building a team. So, zip it up, come listen to Alex Gregory, and we would love for you to like, comment, and subscribe to Hey Genius, as well as refer to our show notes. You're going to find out more about Alex, about me, and also about this podcast. If you love us, please leave us a review wherever you like to watch podcasts. And without further ado, here's Alex Gregory in Hey Genius. Hey Geniuses, I'm Genie Snyder, host of Hey Genius, Make the Connection. And my favorite connection is with you. We're so glad that you, our studio audience, are here today, and I am beside myself. I am thrilled that I have one of my mentors and good friends and one of the people I admire most here in the studio today for our episode, and that is Alex Gregory. Alex is the former chairman of the board, CEO, and before that, president of YKK Corporation of America. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Zipper people, but they do a lot more than that. So, Alex, we're so glad to have you here on Hey Genius.
Well, thank you, Jeannie. It's a pleasure to be here. I do have a problem with my name connected with genius, but I'm glad you spell it the way you do. Anyway, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, genius is the remarkable talent in someone. So you definitely have remarkable talent, and so we're sticking with that. And we are glad you're here. But one of the things we do is talk about connection in business and in life. But I first want to talk about what's our connection. We have had a long-term relationship, and how do we know each other?
I think
or at least, what do you remember?
I think we met first more than 20 years ago at the Georgia College and State University Board of Trustees. I think I was actually chair at that time. That was the first time I was chair. And you joined the board, and since then we've had a lot of other connections. Well, we both been the leader in residence at Georgia College.
That's right. That's right.
I actually worked with you a little bit with some of your clients, and that was fun. So a number of connections there.
Lots of connections, and yes, Georgia College holds a dear place for both of us in our hearts, and we spend a lot of time there and a lot of work on that campus. It's a truly remarkable place, and I do remember that day. I remember walking in we're very fortunate at Georgia College to have the old governor's mansion on our campus, and we were down in a really big room, and I remember walking in as a newbie. And he was way up there as the chairperson, and that was, I do go right back to that day, and that's the first time that I witnessed your leadership in person, and have learned so much from you through the years. So,
sorry to interrupt, but that day was very special for me because I received a phone call during that meeting that I took, and it was from Japan, and they asked me to visit Japan in the immediate future.
Yes.
And that was when they asked me would I take over as the leader for the North and Central America region. So that
Wow.
Really, that day sticks in my memory really well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And talk about that a little bit. What did, tell us the real emphasis when they called you
Right.
from Japan, to take this position. Tell us a little bit more. I happen to know the backstory, but tell us a little bit more about
Well, I'm not
why
sure
that was so significant.
I'm not sure what part of the story you want me to tell, but the world of YKK at that time was divided into 6 regions. And until that time, each region had been held by a Japanese expatriate. And no one, I don't think anyone ever expected anyone other than one of our Japanese friends to lead one of these regions. And so it was totally unexpected when they called me and asked me would I take over the North and Central America region. And
that's amazing. And that's when you take that phone call, even in the middle of a meeting. That is a significant point. And at that time, I didn't know that story. I'm still, sitting at the table, listening, learning. But that is a huge intersection in your life.
Oh, absolutely.
We talk a lot about, obviously, that's what the Make the Connection means here is I believe in interesting intersections in people's lives and businesses that changes the next path. So talk about that a little bit. How did that clearly change your path in business and in life?
Well, I look at that day, I met Genie Snyder that day, and I also was offered the job of
two
president.
different things.
That's right.
Yeah, that was good.
What was interesting at that time is 2000 was like the peak year for our business in this region of the world. Many people in the textile or apparel industry would talk about 2000 as being the peak, and then the world started to change after that. So 2001, which was the year we were living in at that time, was an off year for YKK revenue-wise for us in this region. And then I became president in January of 2002, and I inherited a budget that I really had nothing to do with the preparation of, and it was a recovery budget. Well, we didn't recover. Business got worse and worse and worse over the subsequent 2 years. And so we were in a crisis. The world was changing, and back when I was offered the job, I don't think anybody knew what was about to happen, but all of a sudden I was tasked with a big project. And in fact, the owner of the company, Mr. Yoshida, apologized to me for giving me the job at this particular time. But I told him, I said, I felt confident the team that we had could handle it, and I appreciated the opportunity. There are a lot of lessons in that. One is, a crisis is a good time to learn what you're made of and what your team is made of. And I speak to a lot of classes, especially MBA classes, about my YKK experience. And I'm always careful to say that the Genieus was the team that I had. And I did play a small role in assembling that team, but they're the ones who made the miracles happen. And some quick statistics. Prior to that time, about 95% of apparel was manufactured in the United States that we purchase here. American consumers purchase apparel, 95% of which is made in this country. Currently, that percentage is less than 2%. 2% of the apparel we purchase is manufactured. Well, since about that period of time, it really started changing.
95% to 2%.
To 2%, right. So
let's think about that.
Most of our customers that we were providing products to at that time ceased to manufacture in this company. I've got another couple of charts that shows 59 jeans manufacturing plants that we were providing the brass zippers for. There's nothing better than a big old heavy brass zipper that we consumers demand in our jeans. And we've got one of the largest robots in North America in Macon, taking the copper and the zinc and making brass. And I've got a chart that shows 59 jeans manufacturing plants, primarily in the southeastern United States. In 1999, by 2004 or 2005, they were all closed. All of them were sourcing jeans from outside the country.
Okay, let's just think about this for a minute. And this is something when I met Alex that I took for granted, that there was a zipper in everything. There was a zipper in jeans. I can tell you, the day after I met Alex, I looked at clothes differently. When I would go to buy something that had a zipper, and I love zippers. Clearly, I didn't mean to do this, but yes, I'm clearly wear a lot of zippers.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
Yes, we're supporting the industry. But I always look now to see if it's got that stamp of YKK.
Yeah.
And it's not something I thought about. And I think it also brought to mind, we have zippers almost everywhere that we take for granted. Mm-hmm. There's also these little details you have mentioned of different statistics, big details, 95% to 2%. So what started happening? You're handed this budget, you're handed this company, you're apologized to by the head of all of YKK,
yeah.
And yet you saw that crisis as a challenge that was a trajectory. If we were standing at that moment in time right now, and you were talking about that intersection, what would be the names of those two streets?
Well, I'd have to take 10 or 15 minutes to get a good answer for that question. But let me just say that the world of YKK was doing fine because our customers were sourcing from other countries that also had YKK zippers being manufactured. So the world of YKK was fine. We were in a crisis mode in this region.
In U.S.
In the United States. So at that crossroads, we looked at a very bleak future. So I had 3,000 employees, we had 3,000 employees in our region. And of course, I was very concerned about them. So to make a very long story short, we took all of our existing revenue, all of our sales, and tried to identify the industries into which they fit. For example, we were already selling a few zippers into the automotive industry. And so, again, to make a long story short, we reorganized the company and created these industry groups, and we assigned people to those groups, marketing, sales, product development, engineers, to those industries. And we literally shipped them off to different places, Novi, Michigan for the automotive group, and said, go become experts in that industry. To bring it full circle, today the automotive group, that's our fastest growing market segment. A typical car out in the parking lot will have 15 to 20 products made in Macon, Georgia for the automotive industry. We work with every automobile manufacturer in North and Central America. And let me say, I've retired in 2018, so everything I'm talking about is up to that point. Since then, they have made a lot of other amazing changes and adjustments. But we were the first, I think, region in the world to reorganize in that way. And then later, YKK actually sort of restructured the entire global company along the same lines. They never gave us credit for the idea, but anyway, we were there first.
The genius was there. You maybe out of the crisis, you created this idea, but what it did was it grew the business globally.
We created this idea.
Those connections.
And I remember going to Japan and presenting this concept to the senior leadership in the company, and I think many of them thought I had lost my mind. You can't imagine what a novel approach it was to the marketplace at that time. And looking back, it was the right thing to do. We've grown in all these other markets because of the resources we dedicated to those markets. It's not about providing a product to a customer, it's providing a solution to their problem. And so at the engineering level, you get involved with customers and they call you, I have a problem, can you help me come up with a solution? And that's where business is today, which is a good thing because the incredible people at YKK excel at that. Finding solutions.
So you just did a nice segue to my next question is, I know this because I know you. Our audience knows a bit about this because of your telling the story of how the team pulled together with you as their leader, thinking, how do we do this differently? So we've been doing zippers. So I want to stop for a second. You just said how many products are in US cars?
Let's just say 15 to 20 products.
Or in any vehicle. Those aren't zippers? Those are zippers?
A few of them are zippers,
so what
but
else?
most of them...
Talk about the diversification for us, because we think zipper.
A lot of it is in the seat closures. A seat is a very highly technical apparatus, and it's got a lot of different fittings. And the covers on the seats, for example, we manufacture a lot of products that go in to hold that tight-fitting cover to the seat.
Got it.
And I've got some slides I could show you that,
Oh, got
that
it.
would
Okay.
explain it better. But a lot of different products for the seats.
So just the diversification of that, we don't even know where some of these solutions ended up.
Right.
And they're in our world every single day. You were about to talk about the people that pulled together to make this happen.
Right.
And I know that in our work, yes, you're right. We're not just geniuses alone, right? But how do you, in your work, through your amazing career, and even in what you do now, you are still a leader in so many places, a huge mentor to people. How do you pull the genius out of other people? How do you get them to see things that they may not have seen about themselves? How do you do that?
Okay, good. The way I approached the business was to make sure I had the right people in the right places. In the position, I like for people to think I'm a nice guy and all that, but I had to make some tough decisions, and I had to move some people out who were not in the right places and were not the right people to handle the challenge that we faced. So it was not all fun, but putting the right people in place, coming up with a new organization. I created 2 new positions. My contemporaries and counterparts in other parts of the world, all the companies report to them, and they do a lot. When I became president, at the time we had 18 companies. It's now 12 companies. They all reported to me, and all the department head reported to me. So I was a busy person who traveled a lot. But especially because of the crisis we faced, I knew that organization structure was unsustainable. So I created a fastening business leader and an architectural products. We haven't talked about the architectural products.
No,
Shame on
not
me.
yet.
We make the primarily extruded aluminum products for many commercial office buildings and condos. It's down in Dublin, Georgia. We've got 2.5 million square feet of manufacturing in Macon, and another 1 million square feet of manufacturing down in Dublin for the
Macon,
architectural.
Georgia,
and
Dublin, Georgia, in
right.
U.S., southeastern United States.
Right. So I created these 2, fastening business leader and architectural products leader, and I had all the companies report to them. I said, go run your business. Now, I always retain the P&L responsibility and the compliance responsibility. So it's not like they could go in any direction they wanted to go, because I was going to Japan about every 3 months reporting on our results. So I had ultimate responsibility, like the captain of a Navy ship,
Right.
And if they messed up, that was my fault. So,
Got it.
Which was a good way I liked that style. I liked being responsible.
That style of leadership?
Yeah. I mean, if an employee in Mexico got hurt on the second shift,
Yes.
that was my fault. I did something wrong. I didn't put enough systems in place, especially the compliance part, environmental compliance, safety compliance, code of conduct, making sure we had all good managers. So by creating those 2 positions, I was able to focus on other things, including compliance, strategy, and primarily putting the right people in the right place.
I just heard a couple of things there. So I heard Navy experience.
Yeah.
You've got some Navy experience.
Yeah.
You've got an engineering degree.
Right.
You started off in a small town in Georgia. You were born where?
Eatonton, Georgia. Correct.
Small town in Georgia. So when you were born and you were going through high school and that kind of thing, you thought, let me be the leader, the first American leader of a Japanese company when I grow up.
That's exactly what I aspired to do.
Got it. Where was that path?
My father worked in a cotton mill in Eatonton, Imperial Cotton Mill, and during the summer and Christmas, I would work in that cotton mill. So when it came time to go to college, I asked around, where does one go to become a cotton mill worker? And they said, you go to Georgia Tech and get a textile engineering degree. So my aspiration was to go get a textile engineering degree and come home and work in Imperial Cotton Mill. And that would have been fine. I would have been happy doing that. But after Georgia Tech, I went in the Navy for 3 years. And then coming out of the Navy, my wife and I were in Eatonton on leave, and someone in Macon called and said, Alex, there's a Japanese company looking for a textile engineer. YKK was the first Japanese company to come to the state of Georgia. Today there are more than 650 Japanese
The
companies in
first
Georgia.
of 650.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
so many of us are grateful to then Governor Jimmy Carter, then
Yes.
President Carter, for opening that door, and certainly to George Busby and all the governors who followed after him to nurture that relationship with Japan, to bring manufacturing jobs to the state of Georgia. What a wonderful thing that is.
The intersections and the connections you've mentioned today are myriad. It's really amazing. I want to go to the thing you just mentioned a while ago. You assigned a fastener leader
Right,
and an architectural leader.
right,
So you talked about holding things together and building things.
right.
I hear that in your story too, of we had to hold things together and we had to build things at the same time, pedaling
Right.
while we're on the bicycle.
Right.
You've also talked a lot about the we. Alex always says we, he will never say I. And he talks about the team. So you've talked about systems though. So that intersection also, fastening and building, people and process. How does, you talk a lot about culture
Right.
and corporate culture. That's what, if he's wearing a t-shirt underneath that, it's going to be about culture.
Right.
How did you get to that being a key word in, I see it as you're using it in your life and your work.
Right.
How did that happen?
The thing that I love most about YKK and the founder, Tadao Yoshida, founded the company in 1932, right at the start, he came up with the cycle of goodness philosophy. No one prospers without rendering benefit to others. And every decision we make at YKK is driven by the cycle of goodness philosophy. How does it impact our employees, our customers, the communities where we live and work? You know, that's what the philosophy means. So that is a good starting point for creating a good corporate culture. It wasn't until actually 2016 that I heard a speaker, David Friedman, speak, and he said, "What is corporate culture and does it change?" And I raised my hand, eager to give the answers. I was going to say, YKK's culture is the cycle of goodness, and heck no, it'll never change.
Mm-hmm.
I
You were
would have been
prepared
wrong.
for that.
I was prepared. I wanted to proudly state that.
Ooh, yes.
And I would have been so wrong. What he went on to say is, many companies have nice sounding slogans and principles and values and mission statements and all that.
Painted on the wall.
Yeah, just wonderful thing. But what really determines the corporate culture are the behaviors of the people, the values and things that show up in the behaviors of the leaders, of course, but everyone in the organization. So that was a real wake-up call for me. It connected the dots. We'd always focused on the core values and the philosophy in our discussions with employees, but he gave us another tool, and that was to come up with we came up with 25 fundamental behaviors. I'll be happy to share those with you or anyone in the audience.
Yes. It'll be in the show notes.
Okay, good. These fundamental behaviors, and now weekly we talk about one of those fundamental behaviors for an entire week.
You pick one and
every
focus.
week we go in order from
it.
Canada to Colombia, South America. We're all talking about the same fundamental behavior for a week in every meeting that we have.
Wow.
For 2 or 3
it.
minutes. Jeannie, do you have anything you'd like to say about this week's fundamental behavior? You know,
And so everybody got to fill in.
And we've learned so much about each other. I remember when we implemented this program, I had some senior people who were real naysayers, and now we've got videos of them saying this is the best thing we've ever done to create the culture that we want and to improve morale and communication with our employees. So yes, those things affect me and the business world, but also in my life, of course. And we've had employees. I remember a young man in Mexico saying, "May I take these fundamental behaviors to my church? We want something." I said, "Please, please." Another young lady in Macon who was a single mom said, "I'm going to use these to raise my daughter. We've needed something like this." So that's been a fun
intersection of life and work.
That's been a fun thing to me. But the point I make to a lot of MBA students is, let's reflect on what I just said. I was a year away from retirement before I learned what corporate culture really was.
really was, what you thought it was, what you would have raised your hand and said.
What I thought it was not bad. We were trying to be a good company doing those things. But in terms of as a CEO and people in leadership positions, how do you influence that culture? How do you move it in the right direction? Ensure that it's moving in a direction that reflects those values. And that's the genius of the fundamental behaviors.
That's the genius.
Yeah.
In 2 or 3 minutes, you talked about one of those every week, but you had thousands of people focusing on that same fundamental behavior.
If I can interrupt.
Yes.
Also, on Monday morning, a message comes out from someone in the company describing what that fundamental behavior means to him or her. For example, I wrote some the first go around, and when I was writing about appreciation, I was sitting across from my 100-year-old mother, and I decided to write that one about my appreciation for my mother. So people write them about anything, and that's the discussion that comes out of it. And of course, we can always apply that to business also. Are we showing appreciation for our employees? How often do we say, "Thank you, Genie, you're doing a great job, and I really value you and appreciate you"? So just constant reminders. And it starts off, number one is do the right thing always. And okay, we could stop there. Do the right thing always.
And you can spend your entire time.
But employees say things like, we've talked about that so much, and now when I walk through my neighborhood and there's a plastic bottle on the ground, I used to could just walk right past it, but now it pops in my mind, what's the right thing for me to do?
Could I pick it up?
So I have to pick it up, yeah.
And that's genius.
Yeah.
Those 2 or 3 minutes changed the trajectory of YKK Corporation of America and YKK. I would say that's a wrap, but it's a zip today, and I wish we had 2 to 3 hours more to talk with Alex Gregory. Alex, will you come back another day?
I would be happy to.
And I want to hear about your impending trip to Japan. It'll be your first one back, I think, since
2018.
Where he used to be on a plane every time. I would call him at 3 in the morning sometime, not knowing he was there.
Yeah.
We are going to have to wrap up this episode of Hey Genius, but I want you to think about what Alex has said. The genius of spending 2 or 3 minutes focusing on what is most important in your work and life. I hope that you'll take that away and think of that as we move in to whatever it is we do each week, each day in your life and work. That's genius. So make that connection for yourself, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you again, Alex Gregory.
Thank you.
And we will see you next week. Bye, geniuses.